This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company and Purdy Insurance. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Purdy Insurance and Sunbury Motor Company. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Half hour being brought to you by Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Auto, home, life, the basics. And then specialty insurance, business, boat, motorcycle, RV, among others. Okay? Your insurance needs, they will take care of them. They will make sure you're fully insured. They will do everything they can to save you money. And not only that, they're just good people, great pros. And the Purdy Memorial Golf Tournament is coming up on Wednesday, August 5th, Susquehanna Valley Country Club to benefit the greater Susquehanna Valley YMCA. Get your team together for that. I will be out there. 15th year I've been out there for it, and this is the 35th year of the Truman H. Purdy Memorial Golf Tournament. I would love to bring out there with me Neal Coolong. Sir, welcome. Great to have you back.
Well, maybe I will come out. Let me know when. I'll show you all what's up.
Hey, as long as you play at the same pace as Ryan Fox, we're good. All right. So here we are. It is now transition time, where it's time to get into camp. I know there's joy and rapture throughout the land that Aaron Rodgers is reconciled with his family. So here we are at this point. Going into the Steelers camp, what are a couple of things that you think need to be worked out to make this not just a competitive team, but one that's even better than being a competitive team?
There are certain people at the Southside facility in Pittsburgh that are paid a lot more money than I am to answer that question. I don't know what their perspective is. I am not sure, from my vantage point, and certainly save the soundbite for January. I'd love to be wrong. I don't think they have really improved the team in a manner that makes me confident that anything better than what we've seen recently is not only possible but expected. I think there's always a lot of hype in Pittsburgh in late July. I don't know if we can see anything objectively that suggests they have the ability to improve. Michael Pittman's a nice receiver. He's not a difference maker.
No.
Hopefully DK Metcalf can play, all 17 games this season. That would certainly help. As we've talked about many times, players don't tend to get better the older they get, and you brought back a really old quarterback who's now easily the oldest in the league. I don't know if all those things fix the problems they had offensively over wide stretches of time. The retort to that is the head coaching change. Well, I don't know if I've seen the head coach have a lot of success without high-level talent at skill positions around him. He doesn't have Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb on this team. To put it mildly, that's not the situation he has. He certainly does not have Aaron Rodgers in 2010 through 15. I don't know if they have the explosive ability to really push a whole lot forward. So for me, the question comes down to that. How much are they going to be able to scheme success out of, in some cases, pretty good players, but no significant difference maker on the field, and certainly not enough of them to confuse defenses. I don't think it's going to be especially hard for an offense to prepare for the Steelers from a talent perspective. So it comes down to your scheme. What they have among their coaching staff certainly is different than what we have seen. Maybe there will be a benefit, but we oftentimes want to look at Mike McCarthy's overall body of work as a 15-year block. What that perspective leaves out is the collapses he's had over the last several years that he was coaching in the NFL, one of which was so bad he lost his job in the middle of it in Green Bay. You know, you have prime Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback and you get fired as a head coach. It's not a political issue. You know, right. It clearly is something you're not doing well. In Dallas, whatever reason he lost his job, and I argued with many this offseason about whether it was McCarthy's choice or the team that didn't offer him a contract's choice. However you want to interpret that, you cannot say Dallas had the type of success that could reasonably have been expected for the talents that they had in place. A lot of that, I think, is spelled out pretty clearly from a playoff record that is so underwhelming and so mediocre, it can't be paralleled any better than the guy that just left Pittsburgh. So
that's right.
Once again, put all this together, I don't know how the expectations can be better than they were last year. I'll give them this. New team, new coaching staff, put all that together. You don't have the same kind of film to study. So I feel like early in the season, I think they'll have perhaps a little bit more success than expected. But I think they'll regress to the mean by the end of the year. And I don't know if they have answers to counterpunch after, you know, when the weather gets cold after the second half of the year. I don't know if they have enough to really do anything about that, either talent-wise or schematically.
See, I completely agree with everything you said. I just don't think they did improve this team at all in the offseason. I just don't see it. But I want to go to a player, and it's not Aaron Rodgers. I want to go to the guy that's the face of the franchise, and that's T.J. Watt. Watt is coming off a year where he had the fewest sacks of his career since his rookie year, except for the year he got hurt and only played 10 games. He had fewer tackles, across the board, everything. And he only had 7 sacks this year. He's gone from 19 sacks down to 11.5, now down to 7. What is he and is he not doing over the past season when you watched him? I know he gets a lot of attention, but so did Aaron Donald. And he seemed to get better at a different position, tackle, every year. Why has Watt seem to be sliding back as time has gone?
This reminds me of something Lawrence Taylor once said. In the NFL, it's a business. They're going to underpay you for 10 of your best seasons, so you make them take 2 of your worst at the highest contract possible. That's kind of what that third contract represents in the NFL.
Yes, it does.
Don't take the team discount. Maximize your value when you can get it. I don't want to be the person to write T.J. Watt off. Easily a first ballot Hall of Famer. Easily one of the probably 5 best defensive players of his generation. Mm-hmm. Objectively speaking, though, watching him play last year and largely the year before that, he does not have that, you know, superhuman burst that he used to. That level of athleticism that gave him the ability to line up wide 9, beat a tight end to the outside, get past the tackle coming down, and then go over a running back to still cause pressure on a 5-step drop, which is unreal, all things considered. Not a whole lot of people do that, you know, at a once-a-game level the way Watt would do. He's not adding that extra gear that closes space, giving him the ability to make plays on the ball when it's in the quarterback's hands the way he used to. I think the simple answer is, and this is the one we don't really like in Pittsburgh, but I think T.J. Watt is human, and I think T.J. Watt is feeling the effects of a Hall of Fame career in which he left everything he had out on the field every day. Mm-hmm. You know, I know how cliche that is, and I'm not trying to you know, dip into idolatry here or anything, but he was superhuman for a long time, and he played a lot of snaps. Mm-hmm. And frankly, in history, pass rushers don't have the dip that he had. It is going through currently, 19 to 11.5 to 7, and then jump back up to 19. Mm-hmm. You can't count on that from him anymore, and it's because he gave himself to this team, to this sport, throughout his entire career. Keep in mind, Tomlin was having him play every snap of every preseason game when he was young. He needed the work. He needed the reps. But that takes a toll on you over time. They didn't try to space him out until he was 37 years old. He's not a pass rush specialist. He's a three-down guy. The real challenge, I think, with the Steelers, within Patrick Graham's scheme, what can you do without taking Watt off the field that can give him a chance to get that extra, half second back? What can you do lining him up? What can you do to help set him up? That's going to be kind of a key thing because, he's getting paid too much money. You're not going to take him off the field.
Right.
So I don't know if he is capable of being a defensive player of the year, but that's 99% of defensive players in the league. I'm not worried about that. Can he still be productive? Which last year, there were long lapses of time that he wasn't. And we, as observers, got so used to watching him win games on his own as a defensive player. Keep in mind, we'll credit fairly Mike Tomlin for pulling 9-10 wins a season out of a 6-win team.
Yeah.
But in a lot of those games that they won that they shouldn't have, it was a T.J. Watt play in the second half that ended up being the difference. How many times did Baltimore beat Pittsburgh if T.J. Watt didn't play? A lot. Several of those games, and what's been, pretty one-sided toward Pittsburgh, surprisingly, over the last 6 seasons. T.J. Watt was a huge part of all of that, and I don't know if he has that gear anymore simply because he's human. And I don't think that you can just replace that kind of a player either. We'll find out what they do, but I think you're looking at with the retention of Nick Herbig on a pretty big extension. You're looking at a philosophy that's going to be sort of a rotational system between 3 guys. I don't think he'll be on the field as much, and I think he's going to be in different positions because they're going to have to try to set him up. He's not going to be able to play wide 9 and get to the quarterback anymore.
Yeah, I mean that's a big issue because his impact on the defense is a domino effect. Because of the attention he gets, it frees up somebody else to do something. If he can be handled at this stage of his life one-on-one, right? Because, look, Father Time is undefeated. He's a great player. He's a Hall of Famer. But at the same time, you're also talking about a guy who has 1 career playoff sack. I don't think a lot of people realize that. Is 1.
I would argue at least a chunk of that is because they're in the playoffs because of T.J. Watt, in particular,
that's right.
The post-Roethlisberger era. That's what I mean. I don't think people truly understand how dominant he was. And when you have a Myles Garrett and that, alleged controversy between those two, as if, we need to decide definitively who the best of 2 first ballot Hall of Famers are. They're both phenomenal players historically. I don't think people really get that because they're peers. Yeah. And then, as you mentioned, you've got Donald on top of that. I think history will play out that Aaron Donald's the best defensive player ever to play. And coming back, by the way, which is also not a mortal thing. Aaron Donald's in another class of his own. But Watt did so much game in and game out. And, he's a football player. By week 15, there's no way he's healthy. Whether he missed games or not with an injury is another story. Come playoff time, he was gassed. I think that's really what it is. But that's football. You've got to figure that out. The wrong side of his career is the one they had to play an extra game. That's a factor in all of this. Mm-hmm. He's just not going to have that pop anymore, even to the point where it's like, I don't think he's going to do much during training camp. We're not going to see him a whole lot in preseason games. Right. Sure. I think they're going to try to preserve him as much as they can to make him, as effective as he can be late, which really he hasn't been the last 3 years, and through a pretty weak playoff record, which is really unfortunate for as good a player as he was, to be known as the guy that had to drag his team kicking and screaming into the playoffs most of the second half of his career. It's pretty sad for a guy as talented as Watt has been.
Yeah, no, just thought I'd bring it up because, everybody gets to the tail end of something in their career, and you remember the great moments, the great days, and I thought, I'd at least bring that up. Have you done any research on how Mike McCarthy with Green Bay and Dallas conducted his preseasons and how he handled personnel in preseasons to give us a guide as to what we might see from a Steeler preseason?
It's funny you bring that up. I haven't dug into numbers or anything like that, but I was just discussing with a colleague Aaron Rodgers' take on the preseason from back in the day with McCarthy. You might remember 2015, they played a preseason game, the third preseason game at Heinz Field. In that game, Jordy Nelson, did he tear his Achilles or his ACL? I forget. He was going down the sideline to make a play. Yeah. And I was in the press box, and I remember seeing Rodgers on the field absolutely lose his mind. He went to go check on him, and it's one of those things. The athlete knows, the severity of an injury when it happens. Rodgers seemed to be yelling at the bench or in the general area, and he would not hold back. Rodgers is not afraid to tell you what he thinks. He's always been like that. So he was not quiet about the idea that they had just lost, arguably their best offensive player outside of himself, in a meaningless game because they had to be out there for the quote-unquote dress rehearsal before the season. And that has been, the center of controversy in the NFL over the last 20 years. The preseason games, both from a value perspective to the ticket holder as well as to teams themselves, a lot of players seem to act like they don't really need them. So they went down to 3, but that's in exchange for another regular season game, which is, certainly not an equitable trade, I don't think. More of the issue just comes down to the fact that I think McCarthy was the type that put his guys out there. I don't know offhand anything in Dallas, but I know that season they lost a key player that they had to replace in short order. Keep that in mind. It's not like he went down in the playoffs and they have the entire offseason to prepare for camp in the early season without him. That's mid-August. They're playing in a couple weeks. They don't have time to find a Jordy Nelson. There isn't a Jordy Nelson out there. I would guess, obviously Aaron Rodgers is not going to play in the preseason, and the Steelers, if they have anything, it's an abundance of backup quarterbacks on their roster.
Yes,
they're used to that problem in August. As far as the starters go, it seems less and less advantageous to even bother playing them because we've talked about this a bunch. Right when it first came in, even before the 17th game was added, that first game, maybe 2, seemed to be their own dress rehearsals. Yes. Now there is 17 games. There's even more reason to kind of back into the season a little bit. Teams that start off the best are not always the ones that are playing the best, and even if they are, most of them have some type of lull at some point in the season anyway. So now you're really looking at more of a sense of it like baseball. A team can win 11 games in a row. That's a big deal. Everyone goes crazy for it, and they're nowhere near the playoffs at the end of the year. Football, every game matters more, but the more that you're adding on to it, the harder it is. You have to dilute the value somewhere. There's just much more that happens even with one more game. It has a ripple effect to everything else. So now it'll be interesting to see what McCarthy wants to do with that. But my guess would be for a team that's best players tend to be older players, I can't imagine any of them are going to play. One, because why risk it? There doesn't seem to be any value. You've got a little bit more runway now to build into the season. And 2, they got to figure out who their younger guys are that can play. So it's more behooving, I think, to McCarthy to give younger guys more of a shot moving into this rather than put any additional reps onto the vets they do have, because we talked a bunch about T.J. Watt, and I think all of that is fair. Cam Hayward's going to be 39. He was an All-Pro last year somehow. That's so far away from normal. It's not even you can't even really wrap your head around that for him to be playing as well as he is at his age. There's 0 point in him playing in the preseason. He knows how to prepare himself. And frankly, whatever he's doing, the defense should be doing it around him because he's that good of a player. Add Watt into that for obvious reasons. The rest of them can figure it out. Their vets really don't need to play. And if they do, I don't know. I think that's just too old school of an approach for me today to really entertain.
Well, the Steelers and the Pirates at least have something in common. The Steelers have a series of backup quarterbacks currently on the roster, and the Pirates have a series of DHs playing in the outfield. All right, so, what? Neal? Go ahead. You can react.
What I was going to say is I think the Steelers have a lot of baseball players at quarterback, too. So I don't know if maybe they have a pipeline going that's trading between each other. Save a few bucks in travel expenses. I don't know.
You're the best. Appreciate it. Great to hear you on the other end again.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
Neal Coolong, half hour brought to you by our good friends at Purdy Insurance. Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Sunbury Motor Company and Purdy Insurance. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf and online at sunburymotors.com. Ford Kia Hyundai, the best in new inventory, great pre-owned. When Sunbury Motors guarantee. Look, Ford Kia Hyundai. That's great new inventory with great warranties, and there's also great deals to be had right now. It's great pre-owned inventory. They go over every vehicle on the lot because, look, your budget may be saying that, I need to have pre-owned inventory. Totally get it. Believe me, totally get it. And we're also looking to have our, kind of extend the life of our cars as much as possible. Well, that means quick lane. We all have to go through inspections. There's routine maintenance. Just have to take care of it. Right? And sometimes every once in a while, something complicated comes up, and like you make the choice. I'm like, do I want to keep the car? What do I want to do here? Well, most people want to keep the car. So they do. And so they go someplace like Sunbury Motors where they can take care of the difficult process. Okay. It's all at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf and online at sunburymotors.com. Penn State basketball coach Mike Rhodes on the show tomorrow. We'll hear from him, get a summer update on him on where his roster is right now and where they are practice-wise right now. Also, we'll follow it up with Ivan Juric, who made the decision to come back to Penn State and will be one of the top big men in the Big Ten. And Brant Byers, who transferred from Miami of Ohio to Penn State. Brant is out of Chambersburg. He is a Penn State fan, always has been. And he also played on a Miami of Ohio team last year that went undefeated in the regular season. So, So there you go. We'll hear from them tomorrow on the show. Looking forward to that very much. Then next week, Matt Campbell at Big Ten Media Days. Big Ten Media Days next week. And Tony Petitti, the Big Ten Commissioner at Big Ten Media Days. All right. And for those who missed the Greg Sankey part yesterday, we will have that for you tomorrow as well. Because it's one thing for me to sit there and say, well, let's listen to Jim Phillips. Brett Yormark, we did play a little bit because of how poorly he handled the Sorsby deal. Sorsby. Could you, anybody in a position of power, handle a situation worse than that? Really, you can't. But when it comes to Sankey and Petitti, that's where the power is right now in college sports. That's why I think it's important for you as fans to hear from them. And so we will hear from Matt Campbell at Big Ten Media Days next week. And we will also hear from Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti as a follow-up to listening to Greg Sankey. We know one is not enamored with a 2014 playoff, and the other one is the one that is the driving force behind it. But there are other issues. There are other issues. I like 5 for 5. I think it should have been done years ago. Is playing in the game of red shirts and waivers and things like that. It's like, I used to make the running joke I had on the show for years was the NCAA hands out waivers the same way they hand out water at a 10K. They have to get away from that, which they've been transitioning out of. Now, you do have, for example, players that are getting temporary injunctions that were seniors last year that played 4 years saying, hey, well, gee, how come we don't get a fifth year? Josh Reed, the former Penn State basketball player, is one of them who won his injunction, got a temporary injunction from a court in Cincinnati 2 weeks ago. Others have filed since. We'll see how that plays out. In basketball, you have some room roster-wise. The question is, do you have the money? Roster-wise in basketball, the vet, you are now allowed under the new scholarship rules, 15 scholarship players. It used to be 13. But I can tell you as somebody who, I think everybody, you guys all know I do a lot of off-season work to get ready for the season. That way, when games roll up, I've got a lot of the basics done. Now I'm trying to get into the actual nuts and bolts. It makes the process for me quicker and easier by taking some time in the off season to get that done. And I can tell you that most schools do not carry 15 scholarship players. The vast majority of schools carry 12 or 13 scholarship players. Why is that? You can pay 12 to 13 more money individually than you can 15. Plus, 15 gets a little bit difficult to manage in some ways. Now, teams will compensate with walk-ons. You do need the practice guys. But so is there room at the end for some of these guys? Yes, because most schools are only carrying 12 to 13 scholarship guys. You're allowed 15. The question is there money left in your NIL budget, or did you exhaust all of it? Because it is July now. And does your athletic department have the money for the scholarship? Those are the two issues. Football is 105. So there's probably, guys in that category. The same question would come up. It's July. So it becomes more problematic. And also, have you exhausted your money for the year with the training camp coming up for Penn State? Training camp starts August 5th. So it's 2 weeks from tomorrow. Okay. So, that's the question. That's the fair question you have to ask. It's a question of, have I exhausted all my NIL money because of my budget, and does my university have the money for the scholarship? Scholarships aren't free. You do have to pay for the scholarship. The money has to, there is a financial exchange that happens between an athletic program and the university for the scholarship, which includes scholarship room, board, books, things like that. There is a financial exchange that does happen. So those guys have gone to court over that. And I understand that. I mean, look, they're trying to. It's 5, but I agree with the 5-for-5 rule. I agree with it wholeheartedly. The red shirting thing has always been like, all right, you're planning to trade blink games about, how many games did we play in? Then, they kept expanding the number. Like, oh, okay. And there was one proposal out there that you were going to be allowed 9 games this year. Well, what the heck? What, that means you have to sit out 3 games? I mean, the 5-for-5 thing at least makes sense. They have to straighten out the transfer portal. I agree with the congressional proposal of Senators Cantwell and Cruz. And it's a proposal I made a while ago anyway myself on the show. You get one freebie, the next one you got to sit out a year. And it's part of your 5 years. Coaching changes I always understand. For example, Michigan in basketball went through a coaching change. I think all of you know in listening to the show on a regular basis how highly I think of L.J. Cason, who had to sit out the rest of the season with an injury for Michigan. But boy, when he played, I thought he was a major influence. Cason put his name into the transfer portal this week with the coaching change with Dusty May going to the Dallas Mavericks. So coaching changes I always understand. Because it's not just that you hooked on with a school, you also have buy-in with the coach. I mean, that I understand. But you should not be in a position, as I pointed out in the opening half hour. Like, I don't think I made this point in the opening half hour. I was on another show today, and I made this point. A college player should not have more freedom to dance all over the country than a pro. So let's give you an example. Trinidad Chambliss, Ole Miss, who ended up getting a 6th year and is going to play this year for Ole Miss. So he can transfer. Now, this time he transferred up Ferris State to Ole Miss. I'll give you a better one. Darian Mensah. Mensah's at Duke. Allegedly has a 2-year contract. Right? Says he's coming back. Last day of the portal, puts his name in the portal. Duke's like, what the heck's going on? I thought we had a 2-year contract. He has a buyout. I'm going to go to Miami. So now he's the quarterback of Miami. He could never do that in the NFL. In fact, the moment, let's just say Darian Mensah has a great, great year, and Darian Mensah, everything falls into place in his life, and he's a first-round pick. Do you realize that an NFL team can have control of him for 6 years? You're like, and I'm sure some of you are saying, 6 years? No. The rookie contracts are 4. But you are allowed to have 2 franchise tags. Not 1. You're allowed to have 2 franchise tags. 4 years, 2 franchise tags, 6 years. Can't move. Remember when Le'Veon Bell, the Steelers franchise tagged him? I don't remember people calling the show, and I understand the emotion of it. And I think the suit made the point that they thought the Steelers were being immoral by what they were doing with Le'Veon Bell. And I said, they're not doing anything immoral. They're not breaking any rule. I said it over and over again. Le'Veon Bell's problem is not with the Pittsburgh Steelers. His problem is with his union. Because when they sat down to negotiate the collective bargaining agreement, they agreed to 2 franchise tags. When it came back to renegotiate the collective bargaining agreement, guess what stayed in there? 2 franchise tags. His own union didn't even bargain it out. They didn't even take it out of the bargaining process. They kept it in. But my point is, in the NFL, pros, they have 6 years of control if somebody were to exercise the 2 franchise tags. 6 years. In college, they're barely going 6 months. Jumping all over the place. Multiple teams. I always told the story about Charlie Moore, who was a very good point guard, by the way, at the University of Miami. He started his career at Cal. Then he went to Kansas. Then he went to DePaul. Then he went to Miami. He played for 4 schools in 4 years. Now, I give him credit. He went east each time. But golly. I just kind of sit there and look, the transfer portal is helping Penn State this year. There's no getting around it. So let's not pretend it's not. 24 Iowa State guys coming in, the guys from UCLA coming in. Big tackle from Utah coming in. Who's that? Dallas, a good player. Right? Nottam, heck of a player. I mean, Penn State's being helped. I mean, Ike Eziago, he's going to be really good at defensive end. Penn State. Marcus Neal, McPherson, Sowell, Escondon, Hansen, Rocco Becht, Brock Riker, Bramer, Burgle, Bacon, Brazina. I mean, I can go on and on. Patton, I can go on and on with these guys. Zay Robinson. Basketball-wise, I mean, Urich is back. Chris Latito, a walk-on, is back, but that's it. Nobody else. Everybody else is new. Michael, you'll hear from Mike tomorrow about that. But Roberts Blum is really a heck of a player for him. Robbie's a good player. That they got in from Davidson, good player. Byers is a really good player, good shooters. The key for Penn State is going to be the defensive part. That'll be the key, how well they play defense, because offensively, they're going to be able to play. No question. And but the portal is something else. The NIL thing, I don't know how you get. I have more questions about controlling that because financially it's the Wild West out there. I mean, you can claim anybody's doing anything for you. It's like summer jobs used to be. Like, you know, I mean, how many athletes over the years had no-show summer jobs? And that's, you know, hi, I'm name X player for Double Eagle Energy. Or you're wearing a Double Eagle Energy golf shirt, something. Okay, so he's promoting Double Eagle Energy, and we're the ones paying him his money. Okay, I got it. It's interesting when you read Dave Revson's book, and we've had Dave on talking about this before. And his book talks about the roots of college football and the stuff that he talks about that happened in the 1880s and 1890s and early 1900s is stuff that's still happening today. I mean, I read Dave's book, and the first thing I said to Dave was, I said, it's almost shocking to feel like it's like 100 years later, it's a parallel. He said that's what struck him about it. So the NIL part, I don't know how to control because it should be very basic. You know, I am Kevin Hurst, star quarterback for Pick University. Right? Come on out to Sunbury Motors, da-da-da-da-da. I guess Sunbury Motors gave him, you know. You should be able to do that as an athlete. You should be able to do that. What strikes me is that those kind of endorsements really aren't that effective. You know, you have to be Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, LeBron, right? You have to be in the upper echelon to have an impact to move the needle, as opposed to a college player. I mean, I have no idea what. I don't even know if Fernando Mendoza did any ads last year. I don't know. But the one I remember was in the early days, DJ Uyunglele. He's at Clemson. Clemson's expected to be one of the top teams. He is the face of the Dr. Pepper ad campaign. And then Clemson, boom, struggles. He really struggles. And 1 month into the campaign, he's out. Eventually, he went to Oregon State. Then he went to Florida State. But it's, you notice last year, Dr. Pepper did not use college athletes. They used Bryce Young one year. And they're associated with college football left and right. There just aren't a lot of marketable national names out there. Most of the stuff they do is local stuff. I see Penn State wrestlers and former Penn State wrestlers. I see Zane Rutherford doing a few things on TV commercial-wise. I've seen Carter Starachi do it. But it's all local stuff, which is fine. I mean, at least it's something. It's fine. And if they want to get a group of guys to go down and sign autographs at a place, they should be getting a stipend for going down and doing something like that. But it's all the mega bucks deals. Supposedly Williams got $4 million to be the quarterback at Washington. Sorsby was alleged was getting $4 million from Texas Tech to go there. Supposedly Mensa, that seems like the driving number. But you're sitting there and I don't know what the contract language is. I assume there's some standard contracts. But these guys break contracts like it's nothing. Okay? Mensa had a contract allegedly with Duke for 2 years. After 1 year, I'm going. Sorsby allegedly at Cincinnati 2 years. I'm going. DeMond Williams, right? Allegedly had a 2-year deal with Washington. Announces he's going in the portal, right? It was so bad that even his agent, his own agent, said, I'm getting out of this. I don't want to be a part of this. Even his own agent thought it was slimy, which means it indicates to me, as a guess, that the agent was not contacted by the entity trying to recruit him. He was that Williams was contacted directly. But finally, after a couple of days, and Washington saying, "Hey, look, we're suing you over this. We will bring legal action. We will bring legal action." He went back to Washington. Jed Fish told him, no uncertain terms, he said, "Look, you're going to have to go in and you're going to have to convince the locker room." He said, "You got some work to do." It sounded like he had a great spring. It sounds like, they're all together and they're fine now. But in December, that was crazy. It was a crazy, I think it lasted 4 days. "I'm staying. I got a contract. I'm going." And they're like, "What do you mean you're going?" "Well, yeah. And the Sorsby thing is still, Cincinnati still, it's still on the docket. But the money they're owed. But the portal thing you can solve, and the federal legislation does a good job with that. One freebie, next one you got to sit out a year. Okay. That's standardized. I like it. So that part I think you can solve. The NIL part becomes more difficult to solve. If the money had just been kept internal and there's a cap, okay, fine. I still say down the road, as much as people are uncomfortable with it, and they are, but I think there may have to be collective bargaining where the players have a say in this. Now, you may not have to do it if this bill passes. I believe they're heading, though, toward an August recess right now, too. All right, some basketball talk tomorrow, then we'll really go full bore on football next week. Penn State basketball has 2 weeks remaining in their summer workout. Their last day is scheduled to be August 7th. I got a gut feeling that on August 6th, he's going to tell them to go, "You're fine, go." But we'll hear from Mike Rhodes tomorrow. And we'll also hear from Ivan Juric and Brant Byers. Half hour brought to you by Purdy Insurance. Marcus Street in Sunbury, go to purdyinsurance.com. And Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia. Routes 11 and 15 in Elmels Wharf and online at sunburymotors.com. And WKOK.